All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy podcast where it's winning time, it's Wiggins time. Are the Lakers ready to go all in for Andrew? Also, streetlights over spotlights? How about scams over legitimate plans? Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, two Dennis the Menaces? It's crazy. I'm your host Jonathan Hernandez, and today we are going to be talking about Andrew Wiggins and Kawhi Leonard. Two wings on very opposite ends of the Lakers spectrum, but two wings who are still very closely tied to the Lakers. But before we get started, if I could please ask you guys to like this video, comment down below, and most importantly, please hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Also, smash the new hype button that I've heard is available to users. If you smash the hype button, I think it gains more exposure for the video. So if you guys wouldn't mind doing that, that would be of great help to me. Also, if you want to help me out in any small way financially and help me in my lofty goal of eventually doing all this full time, then please consider contributing to the Buy Me a Coffee Patreon links in the description box below. Please consider becoming a member on the YouTube channel where you'll get exclusive perks and videos on the monthly, or shoot over a super chat during this episode. All right, so let's get right down into it. Andrew Wiggins, why is his name coming up once again, like 2 weeks before training camp? What has changed? And yeah, most of all, like, why is this happening? Because in the past week, we've gotten reports from Mark Stein and Dan Weike pretty much surmising or pretty much reporting that the Lakers have changed their stance on Andrew Wiggins and taking on long-term salary. And so I guess I'm here today to sort of dive into that. And yeah, so first of all, let's answer the question, what's changed? Because in my opinion, I'm a little confused by the new reporting and why people seem to be surprised by all of this. I think there's been a reframing of the Lakers' sort of plans by saying that because these Andrew Wiggins talks have resurfaced, that they're now willing to take on long-term salary and quote unquote win now. But I'm confused by all of that talk because during the early part of the summer, the Lakers did engage with the Miami Heat in trade discussions. So clearly the Lakers were comfortable taking on Andrew Wiggins' salary if they were having conversations, pretty deep conversations with the Miami Heat. So nothing has really changed on the Andrew Wiggins front. The Lakers didn't just decide to go all in and try and trade for Andrew Wiggins now. The holdup on any sort of Miami Heat, Andrew Wiggins, Lakers conversation was always the asking price from the Miami Heat side. So unless the Miami Heat have come down on their stance of asking for the 2031 first from the Los Angeles Lakers, unless the Lakers have all of a sudden said they're willing to trade that first, I'm not sure what's changed, and I'm not sure why this is a story. If you guys in the comments below want to, chime in, and I'll add the comments right now. So first off, let me just summarize this. I don't understand why this is even a topic of conversation right now, because I haven't seen the things that have changed in the original talks between these two teams from earlier this summer. I don't think it's been reported that the Lakers are willing to trade the 2031 first. I don't think that the Miami Heat have said we're willing to just take on expirings and maybe Dalton Connect. So I'll leave it right there. If I had to guess, okay, sorry, let me backtrack. And I just want to reiterate that first, I don't think a deal is coming anytime soon. I don't think an Andrew Wiggins deal is coming before training camp. If I had to guess why this is coming out right now, it may be a little bit of optics, because if you really take a step back, again, I'll say it again, the Lakers were talking to the Heat about Andrew Wiggins in early July. The Lakers didn't all of a sudden decide to go all in right now. Like, this connection to Andrew Wiggins, I don't understand how some people are framing it as, oh, are the Lakers finally ready to go all in? Apparently, they were ready to go all in early July when they were talking to the Miami Heat about Andrew Wiggins. Again, the only sticking point back then and the only sticking point right now is, what is the asking price from Miami's end? And it doesn't seem like either team has budged on, what they're willing to give up. From the Lakers end, it sounds like they're still only willing to give up Dalton Connect and expiring contracts. From Miami's end, it sounds like they want the Lakers 2030 first. And we'll get into whether I'd be willing to trade that first and some trade packages that would make sense involving that first, not involving that first in a second. The other thing is, if I had to guess and answer the question, what's changed, maybe Luka Doncic, after his very strong Eurobasket FIBA run, has internally lobbied even louder for Andrew Wiggins after seeing how good he feels, how healthy he looks, how strong he feels. I mean, he led Eurobasket play in points per game, 34.7 points in 7 games. And so maybe that's one of the things that's changed recently. Maybe Luka, after his game against his semifinal or quarterfinal game against, I believe it was, who did they lose to? Germany, got on the call with Rob Pelinka and said, hey, let's push harder for Andrew Wiggins. Maybe that's why this story is coming up all of a sudden. The other thing, though, and maybe something more tangible, and why this story might be coming up, is maybe the Lakers have actually tried to have extension talks with Rui Hachimura to make sure that he's not just an expiring contract, because I believe at this point, Rui is more valuable if he has a couple years tacked onto him cost controlled, because a team likely doesn't want to trade for an expiring Rui Hachimura and then trade for the rights to essentially sign Rui to his next contract. And so I'm wondering if, and this is just me guessing, I'm wondering if extension talks with Rui are not going great and Rui wants more than his current contract at $18 million. If that's the case and the Lakers have actually tried to engage Rui and his agent on an extension and they want more, then maybe the Lakers are like, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to trade Rui Hachimura and we need to re-engage the Miami Heat and try and get a deal done for Andrew Wiggins, because even though Andrew Wiggins has a player option for $30 million next year, and that would eat into our 2026 cap space plan, that's still $30 million of salary ballast that we can then flip in another deal if Andrew Wiggins is quote unquote not working out. But if they only have an expiring Rui Hachimura who doesn't want to sign an extension, the Lakers kind of have their hands tied. So that is my guess as to why this story is all of a sudden coming up, because, unless I have missed something, we're in the same position that we were in with the Miami Heat and Andrew Wiggins at the start of July. So that's just my guess. Let me know what you guys think about why this story is all of a sudden coming up, because the Lakers were always interested in Andrew Wiggins. Nothing really has changed, Maybe I guess the new tidbit is that they're more willing to take on additional salary from other players besides Wiggins, because again, apparently they were willing to take on Andrew Wiggins' additional salary, his potential player option of $30 million, which he will most likely opt into next season. So that's where I stand on the why is this a story? Why are we talking about Andrew Wiggins again and what's changed? Again, in summary, I don't think anything's changed. If I had to guess, and you really press me for what's changed, I would guess that maybe Luka has been more vocal after his strong Eurobasket play about pushing for Andrew Wiggins and them being willing to re-engage the Miami Heat closer to the trade deadline. And then 2, maybe extension talks with Rui Hachimura have sort of stalled and the Lakers realize, hey, we kind of need to trade Rui for something. And so let's see if we can make this Wiggins deal happen at some point. But I do not think that a trade is imminent, especially not before training camp. Maybe by the trade deadline, and both of these teams kind of know where they stand a little bit better. All right, so now let's move on to the question, what would I give up for Andrew Wiggins? Let's say both of these teams are willing to come back to the table and meet each other more in the middle. So let's see. I'm just pulling up my notes real quick. So what would I be willing to give up for Andrew Wiggins, and would I be willing to give up the 2031 first? So these are the questions that people have been asking me on X, at Lakers Legacy Pod, by the way. First, to answer that second question, would I be willing to give up the 2031st first for Andrew Wiggins? So earlier in this summer, if you guys were, following this podcast, I probably would have said no under any condition. I'm not willing to give up the 2031st first, especially not unprotected, or especially not unprotected. Yes, that's correct. I was under no condition willing to give up the 2031st first, mainly because Wiggins is already 29 years old. He's going to be 30 years old. We don't want to put all of our chickens and especially our best tradable asset in one basket, in the wing version of DeAndre Ayton basket. So those are the reasons why, like initially earlier in the summer, I was not willing to give up the 2031st first under any condition. But after diving into more of Andrew Wiggins' tape from just last year alone with the Golden State Warriors, with the Miami Heat, yeah, this guy, especially defensively on both ends of the court, this guy is a true two-way wing. I mean, we kind of all knew that, but when I really sat down and started chopping up the tape, I'm down to trade the 2031st first, but with some very specific conditions and caveats attached to that. So here's how I'll break things down. Out of the assets that the Lakers have available, the 2031st first, Dalton Connect, a former first, and his value is only going to rise once the season starts and he has NBA players around him. Rui Hachimura, plus the other expirings, Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber. So that's the Lakers' main core asset base, 2031st first, Dalton Connect, Rui Hachimura, the other expirings. I'm not going to include Austin Reeves in this discussion. Would I be willing to trade all of that for Andrew Wiggins and go all in that way? To answer that question, I would say no, I wouldn't. I don't think we should trade all of that and go all in, push all of our chips in for Andrew Wiggins, at least not straight up without additional caveats and other players from Miami side included. Now, I would be willing to do one or a combo of two of those three main assets. And when I say three main assets, I'm mainly talking about Rui Hachimura, Dalton Connect, and the 2031st first. Like a lot of you, I think we'd all be willing to give up definitely one of those assets. I think we'd be willing to give up two out of three of those assets, whatever combination you want to choose, although there are specific caveats that go along with trading the 2031st first. But yeah, in summary, out of our three main assets, I'd be willing to give up two of those assets, but not all of them. Let me know if you guys agree with that. Rui has to be traded to match salary or we will only have 11 guys. Not necessarily. Andrew Wiggins is making $28 million. There are ways to make it work without Rui. Third team involved. Gabe, Maxi, Dalton Connect already gets you to like 26 million of Andrew Wiggins, 28 million. So that's not a definite that Rui has to be included. Some weird sounds going on behind me. Let me get back to my specific train of thought. Let's see. So yeah, would I be willing to trade all of the assets that we have for Andrew Wiggins? No, but I would be willing to trade some combination of two out of the three of our best assets. Okay, now let me get into the discussion surrounding the 2031st first, because again, I have kind of come to the middle with regards to being willing to actually trade that asset, but I have very specific conditions with regards to me being amenable to actually trading that 2031st asset. So let me bring up those, let me bring up a slide real quick and let me tell you guys my conditions for including the 2031st first in an Andrew Wiggins deal. And I'm sure you guys have similar stipulations. So let me just make sure that I have the right, okay. So let's talk about it. If the Lakers give up the 2031st first, and again, I'm willing to do that now, this is an if this, then that situation. If the Lakers are willing to give up the 2031st first, then I want at least one of these bullet points checkmarked from the Lakers and the Heat's end. So one of those stipulations is I would want it to be top 4 protected, at least. So if the Lakers give up the 2031st first, one of the stipulations that I would like added to that deal is the fact that I want a top 4 protection, kind of like the 2027 first that we sent to Utah in the Russell Westbrook deal. We top 4 protected that. So yes, Miami, you can get our 2031st first, but it has to be top 4 protected. Another stipulation. Again, it can be any one of these 4 bullet points, preferably at least 2, but let's move on to number 2. If we're trading the 2031st first, you can only have one of Dalton Connect or Rui Hachimura in the overall package, whatever that package ends up being. You can't have both. That is for sure. And that goes in line with what I was saying earlier about you can have 2 out of the 3 main assets, but you can't have all of them. So if we trade the 2031st first, you can only have, and by you, I'm talking about the Miami Heat, you can only have one of Connect or Rui. And I don't know if it's possible, but maybe there's an ideal scenario there where where the Lakers withhold both Rui and Dalton Connect and only give up the 2031st first. We would need multiple teams. We would need to give up other players, but for now, only one of Connect or Rui. The Heat can only get one of Connect or Rui if they're already getting the 2031st first as well. Third stipulation. Okay, you want the 2031st first? Well, then you have to take on Jared Vanderbilt's last 3 years remaining on his contract. Now, I still think very highly of Jared Vanderbilt, and his $12 million a year is not that expensive, but maybe the Lakers want to get out ahead of just Jared Vanderbilt's continual pylon of injuries, and they think he's going to break down at some point if he hasn't already. And honestly, if we get Andrew Wiggins, there's like less and less reason to kind of need Jared Vanderbilt. He'll like go down to being like a 10-minute player, And if you say that Jared Vanderbilt's like wing insurance, like I don't know if you can call it a perpetually injured player insurance. So that's another stipulation. If we trade the 2031st first, then you, Miami Heat, you have to take on Vando's last 3 years, because what that does for the Lakers is Andrew Wiggins' $30 million player option is going to eat into their 2026 cap space, but we get some of that back if Jared Vanderbilt's $12 million is off the books. So it's a little bit of a give or take between us and the Miami Heat. If the Miami Heat don't want to take on Vando, then they should find a third team that can take Vando on, and they have to give up some assets. But regardless, Vando's 3 years has to be taken on by someone else. Lastly, one other stipulation. If the Miami Heat want the 2031st first, then they have to give us one of their young players of value. Jaime Jaquez, Jovic, Davion Mitchell, and a couple of seconds. I'm not saying all of those. They have to pick between one of those things, or one of those players plus some seconds. Realistically, it's probably going to be Jaime Jaquez in that deal, just because his rookie contract is set to expire soon. So I feel like they would be willing to give him up, and I feel like the Lakers would be willing to take him on. Now, Jaime Jaquez is a little bit older of a prospect than most other young guys, but he's a quote unquote win now plug and play player, UCLA product. He's familiar with Los Angeles and what we're all about. But yeah, so these are the stipulations that I would want the Miami Heat to fulfill. Ideally, they fulfill 2 of these things. So let's say the Lakers are willing to give up the 2031st first and Dalton Connect or whatever, then that first has to be top 4 protected. It can only be Dalton Connect. And on top of that, Miami, you have to take on Vando's last 3 years. Oh, okay, you don't want to take on Vando's last 3 years? Then you have to give us Jaime Jaquez. Make the salaries work, bring in a third team, etc. I'm not talking about salary cap logistics in this episode, okay? They can make it happen. So let me know if you guys agree with these stipulations and if you guys would add anything else to this bullet point. But for me, this is kind of how I would lay it out. This is how I would lay out discussions with Miami Heat, Pat Riley, etc. Like, we're willing to give you the 2031st first if you are able to meet 2 of these conditions of these 4 bullet points. Are you game? So in conclusion, to kind of tie a bow on this section, am I willing to trade the 2031st first? Yes, but at least one but ideally two of the conditions that I proposed above need to be met. Okay, so I do have two actual tangible proposals that we can look at based off of these stipulations. But before we get to that, let's first take it to break here, pitch it to some sponsors, and when we return, I'll give you two packages that make sense for Andrew Wiggins given everything that I've laid out. So I will catch you guys after the turn. For those on live, I am not going anywhere, and I'm going to drink from this matcha milk tea real quick. Let me prep up my next slide. All right, so we are back. As I teased before the break, let's talk about two packages that meet all of the caveats and conditions that I've laid out in the first segment. So let's first talk about a trade package for Andrew Wiggins that would involve the 2031st first. So here's one that would make sense. Again, before I pull this up, don't plug this into the trade machine and be like, hey, this doesn't work. Like, I know this doesn't work currently. We're going to need a third or fourth team to make the salary matching work because both of the Lakers and the Heat are first apron teams, and they pretty much have to almost match dollar for dollar the salary. Okay, so we're not talking about salary cap logistics. If these two teams want to make the main pieces of these deals work, they can make it work. Okay, I don't need the but actually person to come in here and chime in. Okay, I understand you know the cap. That's great. We're not getting into the minutia here. We're just talking about broad strokes. So with that caveat out of the way, here's one package I would do involving the 2031st first, and one that meets some of these conditions. All right, so the first thing I would do, let's read this out. The Lakers would send out Rui Hachimura and the 2031st first, but it's top 4 protected. And on top of that, we would be sending the Miami Heat Jared Vanderbilt, and they would take on his remaining 3 years at around $12 million. And honestly, if you think about it from Miami's end, if they still want to compete, let's say Jared Vanderbilt is pretty healthy by the time this deal gets done. I actually think that Jared Vanderbilt could be helpful for them. Like they could actually use Jared Vanderbilt's wing defense, and they could actually use Rui Hachimura. So from my perspective, I understand that they want to clear their books as well, but Vando's $12 million next year shouldn't be that much of an impediment. And in the here and now, if they're still trying to compete, Jared Vanderbilt should help them. So I don't think that this is a deal for Miami that they should kind of scoff at, but that's just me. I'm kind of being a homer here, but this is a deal that I would do for Andrew Wiggins that involves the 2031st first. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether or not you would do this deal. I know we have a lot of Rui fans here. I know we have a lot of Vando fans. I am a fan of both, but again, after diving into the Andrew Wiggins tape, my heart has been changed a little bit. But yeah, the conditions that the Miami Heat are meeting here from the stipulations that I posed above are they're willing to take on a top 4 protection on the 2031st first, and they're willing to take on Vando's last 3 years at about $12 million. So that is one trade. Now, let's say you don't want to trade Jared Vanderbilt, or let's say the Miami Heat don't want to take on Vando. Then I guess we could tweak this trade a little bit, and instead of Vando, then we just swap him out for Gabe Vincent. Sucks a little bit for us, but as long as we're able to keep the top 4 protection on that 2031st first, then the Miami Heat have at least met one of my stipulations for trading the 2031st first. And so to me, this is a little bit steep still, trading Rui, who, we could potentially extend at a cheaper deal. But again, based off of my theory, maybe they have had extension talks with Rui and those have stalled, in which case, Rui and the 2031st first in a vacuum seems a little bit steep, but, I think at this point I would do it for Andrew Wiggins if we're given a top 4 protection in that deal. All right, let's move on to my trade number 2. Now, let's say the Miami Heat, and I know I said that I wouldn't want to trade all of our 3 main assets and go quote unquote all in for Dalton Connect at the top of this episode. I said I wouldn't trade the 2031st first, Rui, and Connect for Andrew Wiggins. Well, here's one trade package, and here's one exception I'd make with regards to trading all of those assets, because here's how I'd caveat a deal like that, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of mincing my words here. All right, trade number 2. This one involves the 2031st first. This one involves Rui Hachimura. This one involves Dalton Connect. If they want all of our 3 main assets, then they have to take on Jared Vanderbilt's last 3 years. They have to allow us to top 4 protect that 2031st first. And then from the Miami Heat's end, they also have to give us Jaime Jaquez and 2 seconds. And then insert third team here to match salaries, because I know it's not going to work out perfectly given the amount of players involved. So what do you guys think about this deal? It's, again, this is pretty much us going all in, right? And we also have to remember that we're kind of doing Miami a favor by clearing off Andrew Wiggins' $30 million off their books. Like, whatever 2026 cap space plan we had envisioned, we're essentially allowing the Miami Heat to do the same. And we're willing to kind of stake our claim on Andrew Wiggins for $30 million expiring in 2026-27, which I don't think is that much of an impediment, because Andrew Wiggins can help you now, but also the Lakers can actually use his salary ballast in the future to make a trade. With what assets? Because they're now going to the Miami Heat, I'm not sure, but the Lakers will have $30 million of expiring salary in Andrew Wiggins in the 2026-27 season if they trade for him. But yeah, in essence, if the Miami Heat want Rui, Dalton Connect, and the 2031st first, they have to meet all 3 of my stipulations. They have to allow us to top 4 protect the 2031st first. They have to take on Jared Vanderbilt's remaining 3 years on his contract. And they have to give us Jaime Jaquez and 2 seconds, because we need to refill our draft coffers in some way. So that is like an exception to the rule. That is the one scenario in which I would be willing to give them all away, give up all of our best assets to take on Andrew Wiggins. And I think a deal like this would actually help the Lakers, because Jaime Jaquez in and of himself, even though he's entering his restricted free agency as early as next year, I think he could be viewed as an asset that the Lakers can either use right now as an actual player who helps their team, but also, as a player that they could potentially flip, or a player that they can use to sweeten a bigger deal. So that's pretty much going to do it for the Andrew Wiggins talk. Let me know in the comments if you guys have if you guys want to talk about any other things. Maybe I'll loop back around to the Andrew Wiggins stuff at the end of this episode based off of some of the comments. But yeah, let me just recap everything that I've gone through. To make things simpler and to summarize everything I've said, if we're just talking about getting Andrew Wiggins back and no additional Heat players are coming with him, in summary, I would be willing to give up any 2 out of the 3 main assets that I've listed above, meaning the 2031st first, Rui, Connect, and then from the Heat's end, let's at least, no matter what, get 2 seconds back, especially if the 2031st first is going to be a major part of this package. So let me see. Mountain Sky says, it is being reported that Miami wants Rui, Connect, and the 2031st first, and Lakers are only open to giving up Connect. Correct. That's essentially where we stood, I believe, at the beginning of July, and where we stand now, which means we're at a stalemate, and nothing is going to change unless one of these parties backs off from their hardline stance currently. I think the Lakers are right to kind of, I'm sure they're showing the Miami Heat the sort of stipulations that I've laid out here, where it's like, if you want the 2031st first, then this has to happen. Are you willing to meet this criteria? If not, then, let's hold off on it. So, so that'll do it for the Andrew Wiggins talk. I hope that was somewhat insightful for you guys and entertaining. Let's move on and talk about Clippers and Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard, because I haven't been able to get my 2 cents in on this. Let me find a proper... Oh, we don't want that. Okay, that's good enough. So I haven't been able to get my formal 2 cents in on this whole Pablo Torre, Kababayan, shout out Philippines. Uy, Philippines! Um, Pablo Torre's reporting on Aspiration, Steve Ballmer, Kawhi Leonard, two of the Dennis the Menaces. We recently found out this past week that there's another Dennis the Menace, and it's Dennis Wong, minority owner of the Clippers. There's a lot going on. It is the story in the NBA. It is the story, all caps. And I'm going to tell you guys why this story matters to the Lakers and how it pertains to the Lakers. Not just because, Kawhi Leonard is a free agent that we once chased, not just because the Clippers are the other team in Los Angeles. I'm going to tell you why this whole investigation, why what happens next with the Clippers matters to the Lakers. Because you guys all know the story, so I'm not going to relitigate everything that's happened up until this point. I just hope that you guys have listened to both of Pablo Torre Finds Out episodes. I hope that you've been I'm sure you've been following at least some of the minutia and the details with regards to where we now stand, because there is more than a smoking gun. There's more than smoke in the gun at this point, to sort of lay the hammer down on the Clippers. But the NBA is currently undergoing their own investigations, which may take time. But with all of that out of the way, and again, I'm not going to go through the specifics, I think with regards to what should happen next to the Clippers, the timing of all this is very interesting. So here's why all of this matters to the Lakers. The Lakers just got sold to Mark Walter and the Guggenheim Group for $10 billion. When this happened, I feel like this was the rest of the league's worst nightmare, because the Lakers already have and always have had a built-in advantage with their name brand, how global they are, the city that they live in, the weather that we have. It is like a beautiful 78 degrees in California, in Los Angeles right now. The Lakers already had so much built-in advantage, and I didn't even mention their storied tradition, right? The Lakers already had so much of a built-in advantage without having crazy rich owners, because Jeannie Buss, while rich, in comparison to all of these other multi-billionaire owners in the NBA, could only stretch her dollar out so much. And we've seen that, obviously. This is why everybody complains about the Lakers front office and us not being able to, amplify the margins, not only from a roster perspective, but from an organizational perspective. The Lakers being sold to Mark Walter and the Guggenheim Group was the league's worst nightmare. And now we have this story with Steve Ballmer, the third richest person in the world, aspiration, money laundering, and cap circumvention. Now this story has come out, and here's how it relates to the Lakers. I think this is a very pivotal moment for Adam Silver and the NBA. And I think the Lakers, having just been sold for $10 billion to an ownership group with deep pockets, only exacerbates this situation further. Because I think the NBA owners, if they're not already, I think they have been, the NBA owners are going to be out for blood. They will want Adam Silver to come down with the most forceful Thor hammer that he can on the Clippers. Whether or not Adam Silver has the balls to do that to the third richest man in the world, I'm not sure. I just know that the rest of the league is looking over at the Lakers and their new ownership group, and they were already scared about the possibilities of what could happen if the Lakers were actually rich and actually had a billionaire owner behind them who was willing to do anything and everything to make sure that they win. They were already scared before all of this, but now that they see what's been going on with Steve Ballmer to this extent, I think the other owners are going to want the other owners are going to want Adam Silver to use the Clippers and Steve Ballmer as an example. And so this is a very pivotal, sliding doors, fork in the road moment with regards to what is Adam Silver going to do, because I know if I was another owner, I would want him to use the Clippers and Steve Ballmer as an example right now for teams like the Lakers before the new ownership group gets underway. Because again, imagine what the other owners are thinking. The Lakers, with all of their default built in advantages, name brand, city, now they have a big time billionaire owner who has multiple businesses that he's been operating to an optimal level, AKA the Dodgers. Imagine the connections he has. Imagine the under the table dealings that he'll be able to pull off. Look at what he's already done with the Dodgers, sparing no expense to make sure that that team is top notch. And I think they're struggling right now. I don't really watch baseball, but I know that there is no cap in baseball, but there is a luxury tax to help curb some spending. And regardless of that luxury tax, Mark Walters has still skyrocketed that bill to the moon, and it hasn't mattered. So the owners are scared at what is to come with regards to this partnership, not a partnership, with regards to the new ownership that the Lakers have. And so right now, this is their moment to tell Adam Silver, you better come down hard on this Steve Ballmer, MFer, and the Clippers, because if you don't, then I don't know what's going to happen with Mark Walters and the Lakers. And so, yeah, that's how, in my opinion, this is how this all relates to the Lakers, how the Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer fiasco relates to the Lakers, because I feel like the small market owners probably want to get out ahead of this, make sure that Silver makes an example of Ballmer before the Mark Walters Lakers era truly begins. Otherwise, they are all screwed, because if he lets the Clippers slide and only gives them a slap on the wrist, then everybody kind of knows what we're dealing with here. We now know that we live in this wishy-washy landscape where every owner, if they're just smart about covering their tracks, can circumvent cap rules by coming up with very loose and ambiguous explanations, even if those tracks are uncovered, which we're seeing with Steve Ballmer. If they can still explain away all of this evidence that points to salary cap circumvention, then it's fair game for everybody else, and it's fair game for a guy like Mark Walters to do whatever he wants to do in the back channels, in the black market, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, this is where we stand. I think this is why I think, even though I know a lot of people are, dubious about whether or not Adam Silver will actually hammer the Clippers, I would not be surprised if he goes down hard on them. Pause. Because again, I think he's facing a lot of pressure from the other owners to use the Clippers and Steve Ballmer as an example now, before the Lakers and Mark Walters start to get underway. We got to get out ahead of this and show the rest of the league that you cannot do any of this, whatever aspiration and tree planting and minority owners' daughters working for the money laundering company that you're laundering money to. Like, none of this can happen. None of this can happen when Mark Walter and the Guggenheim Group fully take over the Lakers. Because if we're still living in this wishy-washy landscape, then we forfeit. Luka Doncic under a billionaire owner who's willing to spend and maybe do some shady dealings in the back rooms. Like, we can't have this. And so Adam Silver, now's your time. Hammer the Clippers so that we can use them as an example for everybody else, that you cannot even come close to meddling with this type of illegal stuff. Okay, so that's where I'll leave it on why I think the whole Kawhi and Clippers fiasco sort of matters to the Lakers and where the Lakers kind of get involved with all of this. I'll just end this episode by talking about the other obvious connection to the Lakers. And let's just end this episode by talking about the purple and gold poetry of this whole Kawhi saga that actually began in 2019 when we were chasing him after making the Anthony Davis trade. Because the irony and poetic justice of it all is chef's kiss. 2019, the third star chase, the whole plan was coming into view. We had already traded for Anthony Davis. Kawhi Leonard, we were talking to Kawhi Leonard. Back then, I actually was not too enthused about trading for Kawhi Leonard. And this was just a personal thing. I had nothing against Kawhi Leonard. I knew how good he was. I just did not I just did not want to root for a team that felt like a cheat code, if that makes any sense. Like I thought getting AD, LeBron, and Kawhi on the same team would have looked too Miami cheat. And I would have wanted another superstar instead. In fact, I had always lobbied for Paul George, Kawhi's teammate, instead of Kawhi. And I thought that was going to be the Lakers' main three that I would have been able to get behind. Paul George, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. The Kawhi stuff, I was like, man, he's really good, but I've never been a fan of his robotic game and his robotic personality. Paul George, to me, like on paper, if we're taking like the weird podcast piece stuff and his injuries to the side, like he always had more of the fluid, aesthetically pleasing plug and play game to me. And also, he's less of a, if we had gotten him and we had won the championship, which we did end up winning the championship, I feel like it would have looked less like the Lakers just rigged this whole thing than if we had gotten Kawhi. So that's just my personal anecdote of during that time. I was not too like gung ho about let's get Kawhi Leonard like everybody else was. And boy, am I even more glad that that didn't happen, because for the Lakers and the Clippers, that was a true sliding doors butterfly effect moment for both franchises. Not only did the Lakers not get Kawhi Leonard, but they were then able to, make all of their Plan C dealings with Avery Bradley, KCP, et cetera, et cetera. But they were actually able to win the championship that next year, even though it was the bubble. Say what you want about that championship. The fact that they didn't get Kawhi Leonard and still won the championship that year is pretty crazy. And then on top of that, when you look at everything that the Clippers had to give up for Kawhi Leonard, now they got Paul George with him in a package deal, but they had to give up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, first round picks to the moon, and who won the championship this past season? It was the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the fact that the two teams that were sort of intrinsically involved with this whole Kawhi Leonard deal from the start, the Lakers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, the fact that those two teams won championships before the Clippers is endlessly hilarious to me. That is more two chef's kisses for that. And so the poetic justice of it all, us dodging a bullet and missing out on Kawhi Leonard, only for him to become the thing that was initially supposed to catapult the Clippers to a dynasty, sustained brilliance. The fact that he is now the thing that might cause this whole franchise to crater once again is insane to think about. And I'm not a huge like Clippers hater or whatever, but I just find it endlessly hilarious the ways that they continually shoot themselves in the foot, intentionally, unintentionally, in this case, kind of intentionally. And the other thing I want to bring up about all of this and how funny all of this is if you remember when the Clippers first got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who remembers all of their marketing? The grit and grind stuff, the street lights over spotlights. I don't even remember the other monikers, but they were so hokey and stupid. But the way the Clippers were sort of branding themselves in the Steve Ballmer, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George era is so funny in hindsight. It was funny then, but it's even more hilarious in hindsight because they kept branding themselves as this, we do things from the ground up sort of thing. Pull yourselves up from your own bootstraps. We're the team that's, willing to spend money and go all in at all times, even though our players are injured. And maybe from a brand perspective, the Lakers were always sort of like the big brother, like the rich, posh franchise, and the Clippers were the grinders, the hipster underdogs. That's from a brand perspective. But from an ownership perspective, it's actually the Clippers who were the big bad wolf of Wall Street bullies. And it's the Lakers this whole time who have been the literal mom and pop shop run store. But it's just funny the framing of both franchises, across the league and across other opposing fan bases who hate the Lakers and just want to crap on them at every turn. The last couple of years, if you remember the way fans and media were talking about the Clippers in relation to the Lakers, and even our own Lakers fans, the way that they would use the Clippers as this poster boy example of how to run a franchise. Why can't the Lakers do what the Clippers are doing? They always get these cheap deals for these really good players. Why don't they spare any expense? Why do the Clippers always spend money, et cetera, et cetera? Now we see that they've been doing all of these backdoor dealings to get all of this done, and it's backfired in their face in the most hilarious of ways. And I find the poetic justice and the irony of it all super satisfying, because whether it was Lakers fans who were doing it or opposing teams that hated the Lakers or the media, the last couple of years, they have tried to use the Clippers as the shining example of how a franchise should be run, and the Lakers as just this like bumbling, fumbling like franchise that's still trying to find its feet and only got saved by LeBron James, and that's kind of true. They always luck their way into these sorts of things. Meanwhile, the Clippers, they do things the right way, and clearly they do not. And as Pugzilla writes in the comments, clips are gonna clip. Clips gon' clip. And that is very true. This is where we're at. And yeah, again, it all started with Kawhi Leonard. Think about that. The quietest player in the NBA has just set off a nuclear bomb, and somehow he's going to his own franchise is going to implode because of him, and the Lakers have been saved from that. And look at where we stand right now with Luka Doncic in his prime. The dichotomy and the what ifs of what would have happened if we had gotten Kawhi Leonard instead, where we'd be at, what we would have. Yeah, it's just crazy to think about, and I'm so glad that we are here and we can see the differences once again between the Lakers and Clippers. And now we enter a new era with Luka Doncic and the Mark Walter Guggenheim group, while the Clippers are swimming around in controversy once again, the most hilarious of controversies once again. And they just keep clipping. And so that's where we're at. That's where I'll leave all the Kawhi Leonard Lakers Clippers talk. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As usual, once again, please like this video. Please comment down below. I take a lot of time in preparing these things out. So if you appreciate the work that I do, yeah, like, comment, subscribe, mash that hype button. And if you are so inclined and are able to do so, please consider donating in any small way financially to any of the links below. Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee is probably the best option. Becoming a member on the YouTube channel is also a great option because I have exclusive videos up there, and we'll try and do more exclusive exclusive membership stuff, including some Discord chats and whatnot, as it continues to grow. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Podcast-wise, subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can catch this episode audio-wise eventually once it comes out. And yeah, with that said, this has been Jonathan Hernandez of the Lakers Legacy Podcast, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.